Good morning. Welcome to Sunday morning from the studio. Been meaning to do a Sunday morning one for ages. I'm just typically so disorganized I can't. It's about Rupert, Rupert and Nigel. Sounds like a setup for a 1950s kids storytelling series, isn't it? Um, and in honor of Rupert, I'm in my best farmer's tweed and wool waistcoat with a 11 o'clock shadow. Actually, I haven't had a shave yet, so you'll have to excuse me. My Englishness is revoked until I'm shaved. What I think is going on? So I want to discuss this from more of an ontological, metaphysical point of view, what I think is happening. And essentially, I think we are in a time of revelation. I genuinely, in the larger sense, and there is the big revelation, which is the book of Revelation. Need the coffee. And the smaller revelations, which is what we're seeing happening in society. And I do think we are in a period of revelation. And by that, I mean all things have to be brought to light. Everything that isn't working and can't serve us going forward will be exposed. So how do I see it? I see the next 5 to 10 years, even the next 5 to 15 years, as a complete reversal of everything that happened from the French Revolution period onwards. Now, what I think will happen there is, I think, if you look at what has happened, the systems that were laid in ground during that revelation or that revelatory period, that revolutionary period, have become the dominant power structures now, because they were essentially the proto-communist systems. They now dominate everything. So I think we will see a reversal of that within Europe as the people push back and undo everything, this creep, this poison that's got into the West in the last 250 years and corrupted everything good that was created. They distorted it. And I think you'll see the European nations overthrow those shackles and begin to walk free. I think in England, we'll see the opposite of what happened in the late 1700s, where I think we will succumb very briefly. And because this is what this is. The Starmer regime is us succumbing to that which we resisted in the late 1700s. So that 1780 period onwards, we will see England go full communist in the Western sense. Now, you got to remember there's two senses to this. The East was always meant to have militaristic communism. The West was always meant to have this soft, suited and booted communism. And that's essentially what's happening at the start. It's not going to be a bloodshed. It's going to be a persecutory communism. It's going to be hush hush now or you go to jail communism. It'll be a financial communism. It'll be a land grab communism. But it'll all be done under the guise of compassion and empathy, which is what they do. They are basically compassion hacks. So everything has to come to light, and everything that doesn't serve the will of the people will be pushed to the surface so that the people can see it and make an informed choice on that. And that includes political parties. So what we have going on at the minute is that Rupert Lowe has been forced out of Reform. It looks like basically they forced him out because he's too strong of a character and he's basically saying things that certain people within the hierarchy of Reform find uncomfortable. Now, one thing that's happened to Nigel over the last year is that Nigel's gone incredibly lukewarm. And Nigel was never that lukewarm. Now, everyone's saying, always playing to the center, and that might be true. But you also have to remember that Reform couldn't have done what they did without an enormous financial injection from a certain individual, that being Zia Youssef. Now, Zia Youssef is interesting because Zia Youssef hides his full name in the same way that Kemi Badenoch hides her full name. Nigel's tone shifted after Zia Youssef came on board with his millions. Now, arguably, you could say that achieved the result that they got at the election, but their polling remained roughly the same. So who knows? Who knows? I certainly think that without Zia, they probably would have won exactly the same number of seats. So something has shifted. And I did say at the time that there will come a point, and I say this without malice, because I'm sure Zia Yusuf is a nice man. I detect something of a liberal weakness in him, but I'm sure he's a lovely man. And I said at the time that there will come a point where reform will have to choose the people or the money. And I think that will happen. I think Nigel will have to make a choice at some point. It's the people or the money. And the more that he moves towards democratizing the party, which he's doing it in an incredibly slow way, the more the people will have their say. So something obviously shifted within the tone of the party. Rupert Lowe is very forthright in the way that politicians in the up to the 70s were. You couldn't cast a hair between Rupert and John Prescott. They probably would have got along famously, although disagreed on a number of things, but give them a bottle of brandy and a glass of port, and they probably would have aligned on pretty much everything else. John Prescott, famous for his fantastic rabbit-like left, and was an amateur boxer as a young man, incredibly forthright, probably had no qualms whatsoever, thoroughly dismantling you in private if you crossed him in public. And Rupert's pretty much of the same ilk, as were all Englishmen before we got lived and before we got cooked. So a lot of people are looking at Rupert and going, oh my gosh, yes, that's fantastic. We haven't heard that for a long time. We haven't seen a man like that in British politics for an age. And what's happened is the British politics has become full of liberals and wets. And the liberals and the wets, generally, if they're male, they're very estrogenic. They are afraid of strong men because they know they can't compete. They're afraid of any man that has a shred of testosterone above 600 parts, right? So someone like Rupert comes in and they can't handle it. And, you prodded him in the chest, like, so what? The guy should have just shoved him down the steps. It's like, so what? This is the cut and thrust. This is the business of making sure whether your people live a decent existence or die a miserable death. This is the difference of whether your country is won or lost. Now, remember, you go back 600 years and we executed Lord Sussex on the deck of a ship when he was trying to flee the country just because he lost some territory in a war, right? So that's how seriously we used to take matters of the realm in the past. And my God, how the mighty have fallen, and we have fallen. So I don't think Rupert having stern words and berating people for not standing up to what the people need and deserve is a bad thing. I think it's a necessary thing. I think we have really lost the art of berating people and letting people have a piece of our mind. And I think it's something that needs to come back, particularly within politics, because if you remove that, all that happens is the weak are allowed to thrive. That's what happens. And weak people will ruin and are ruining this nation. So previously, I would have said that strong person was probably Nigel. And Nigel upset people much in the same way. He would go around and speak his mind. He was almost very Achillean in how he did things. He would come out to battle and he was wonderful for the longest of times. And this last iteration of Nigel has been incredibly subdued. It's been incredibly quiet. And it's not normally like normally you can't stop Nigel from poking the bear. But he has to. And he stopped poking the bear, and Rupert's picked up the mantle. Now, Rupert's not saying anything that's controversial. Rupert's merely talking about what the people are talking to him about. Now, these aren't far-right talking points. I work with the public, and I know people who are first-generation migrants from the 60s and 70s. I know people who are 70-year-old pensioners, women. I know men in their 20s and 30s. I know women in their 20s and 30s. I talk to young 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. They're all saying the same things we'd say. All of them. It's not that he's out of step. It's not that he's been hijacked by some far-right thing. He's literally voicing the will of the people, or the voice of the people. Now, what do I think is really going on? as it stands at the moment, and unless something significant changes, in which case Pete North is right, unless something significant changes, then I think reform will be the next government. Now, what everyone's frightened of, and this is something that Pete North's been warning about since before Nigel got involved, is that there'll be a shambles, that they have no policy, that they have no direction. They'll simply drift and shift. Now, that was the case. That was the opinion of Ben Habib, it's the opinion of Rupert Lowe, it's the opinion of many others who've been pushed out. What I think is actually happening from an ontological point of view is that things are being brought to light so that if reform do accept that, and if they are handed that historic mantle, that heavenly mandate, which it looks like Nigel currently has the heavenly mandate, then it has to be purified and it has to be fit for service. Everything going forward has to serve the people or it won't last. We've had this 25 years of this huge corporeal structure of corporations and globalism and everything else. That's done. That 250-year period is over. We're now going to go forward into a period where the people regain what they had lost. And if it doesn't serve the people, it will not last. And currently, reform aren't really serving the people, and people are voting for them because they're the least worst option. That makes sense. There's a lot of people who are currently just waking up to what's going on, and reform seem like a breath of fresh air. But as they'll see, as they frequently fail to tackle important issues when they are 5 and 6 days and a week and 2 weeks late and commenting on issues that are important to us. I mean, you got to think back to Southport and everything that occurred around that. It took Nigel a while to get his gears going, and he spent a few days commenting about, it's the price of beer or something completely irrelevant. I was thinking, can you not see what's going on, man? Like, are you not aware? And there's something about this issue with immigration. It terrifies him. He won't go near it properly, fully. And I think that is because they're not importing everyone. Okay? We're not getting tons of Buddhists, and we're not getting an equal mix of Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Taoists, Christians, Muslims. It's almost entirely singular in its religious definition. And that is precisely so that we can't criticize it. There's no other reason. These people are being used as pawns. And Nigel's terrified to go near that issue, which he wasn't previously. So I think that reform will continue to have things like this exposed until they purify those things out of the party. Now, if they fail to purify those things out of the party, they will probably start losing ground. And I see one of two things happening. I see either reform purifies those things out of the party and really captures the sentiment of the public, because what Rupert is echoing is becoming the center line, the center position. And indeed, everything that Rupert's echoing, if you look at the generation that went to war, World War II, was centrist. There was just a normal point of view to have. And even the left would have had that point of view. So they'll either purify those things out of the party and become the party that we need, or they will end up losing so much of the vote share that they have to form a coalition. The coalition will probably end up being something like Reform, the Tories, and potentially Homeland or UKIP, if they can capitalise on what Reform can't. So I do see everything as we're in the period of small revelations before the big revelations. And you can probably look at everything in society and see that things are being pushed to the surface. This dark underbelly that's hidden for so long is going to be getting pushed and pushed and pushed more and more. But I wouldn't panic over it. I wouldn't get emotionally drawn into it. It's a process of things that have to play out. It's very unfortunate for Rupert. I don't think there's probably much legal standing. I mean, he said some hurty words to Zia Yusuf. We expect members of the Reform Party to be above the hurty word policy. We expect them to not bend to the hurty word policy. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we're kind of railing against is the hurty word mentality. So if he's going to do that, doesn't look so good, does it? So I think that reform will continue. after this. I don't think it'll dent them that much at all. However, I think it'll dent Sia. And I think this is the beginning of the clock ticking for the end of Sia Yusuf. And I imagine if his wars continue and it becomes more in battle to Nigel and somebody else walks along with the checkbook, then it could be the end of Sia Yusuf too. So, yes, zoom out, take a bigger picture. All is not lost. It's a purification of the ranks that's going on. We have to see these things. And it's not that Rupert Lowe is being forced out. It's that Rupert Lowe is being cast probably in the correct position. And that it's reform that's being exposed, and that we're seeing what needs to be fixed with reform. Because they've lost a lot of support, and a lot of people have just went, well, we saw this, we thought this, but you just made us believe that this is true. We didn't want to believe it's true because we wanted to throw our weight behind it. So somebody was saying the other day that there's an American guy was saying, he worries for the British and how bad it is. And I simply said, we just need our Richard. Give us the man and we'll give you the victory. We're ready. We're ready for battle. We're ready. The country's ready for it. We just need that one person who's going to stand in that gap and say, these are my people. I will fight for my people, because we are an ethnic nation, and we have an ethnic thing. And, we like our leaders like Geordies, like their football players. There's passion. We want to see, I don't know. A lot of people don't get that Geordies, yes, we want to win something, but we're not bothered if we lose a game. We just want you to play well. We want you to do well. We want you to give it everything, because we give everything to everything we do. That's how we're wired, right? So we want to see you do the same. If you know anything about Lord Percy, Lord Percy was quite, Harry Hotspur we call him, but Lord Percy was quite remarkable. He's famous for two things. He's famous for chasing at the French line on his own, with such ferocity that the French bolted and ran, and slapping the king in the face and living. So that pretty much typifies the average Geordie, right? And that's what we want in our leaders. We don't want an estrogenic party liberal individual. We want someone with a testicular fortitude. We want someone who's brave. We want someone who's courageous. We want someone who has passion and drive and is decisive. We don't want people who take 2 and 3 days to craft a statement. We don't want people who, dance around an issue that's so nationally important and nationally distressing that they don't make a comment for a week or 2 weeks. We don't want people who reverse. You look at Tice. When the first United Kingdom rally happened, Tice was the leader of reform, and he wished the rally all its best. You get him 6 months later, and he doesn't want to be associated with that lot. What happened within that time? Well, Nigel came back as leader, and Sia Yusuf came in with the checkbook. That's what happened. So we don't want leaders like that. We don't want people like that involved in politics. They are how we got here. Boomerism is a disease, and it's dying. And we don't want to go back to boomerism. We want something new. We want something that does resemble Richard. We want something that does resemble Henry. We want something that even, resembles Disraeli. We just do not want to go back to that. And we can't go back to Thatcherism either, because Thatcherism led us here. And I'm not talking about this from a political point of view. I see them as spiritual things. Politics is the last expression. It's, for me, the most degenerate expression of the will of the people. But it is where we are. Unfortunately, they've disabled the monarch to such an extent that the monarch doesn't even have the will to reign anymore. And unfortunately, the only expression that we have to create the change necessary is the political vehicle, which I think is degenerate. But we have to imbue it with a spiritual philosophy, and that spiritual philosophy has to be forthrightness. It has to be, what is to be English is to be forthright. It's to be honest. It's to stand up. It's to push forward. It's to prod people in the shoulder. It's to point things out when they are wrong. It is to stand in the gap. And that's what's required of all of us. And we are doing this. We are standing in the gap. We're standing up to people on the streets. We're pushing back. We're standing up to people on the tube stations. We're telling, no, no. But we want the same from our leaders. We don't want this genuflected, false gentlemanliness. Because a gentleman is not weak. A gentleman can eviscerate you verbally in a way that won't get him locked up in these days, you know. May your scorn forever crumble. May your tea forever be neither too hot. What was it? May your tea forever be either too cold or too hot. And then that's the most amusing, weak versions of that. But a gentleman would dismantle people. A gentleman would get up and physically accost someone for insulting a woman. These are the values that we've lost that have been forced out of us. So no, I don't see Rupert Lowe as a particular threat or a bully. I see him being a man. And he certainly wouldn't be out of place in the north of England either. So I do think we're in a revelatory period. I don't think anybody should lose any great hope or vision for the future. This is coming. You know, the glorious restoration of England is coming up. I've been speaking about this for several years. It will be here. It will come. There's going to be twists and turns till we get there. Reform may be a one-term party. And that's fine, because party politics is dead. And I think this is what they're going to realize. We're through with party politics. Now, it may be there's a fringe of us have grasped that, but this will seep all the way through. We are through with party politics. It is gone. What we're looking at now is loyalty for leadership that is worthy. England is a nation of first among equals. We are not the divine right of kings in this land. We are first among equals. We have a heavenly mandate. The heavenly mandate was ever abused in the past. They were out. So this is what we need in England. We don't need more weak men. We need strong men. And I think that, and I do still believe that Nigel will be Prime Minister, but I think he will have to be forced to be a tougher, more robust version of Nigel, because the world is going to flip on its head in the next few years. And if he doesn't put his big boy pants on, he's just going to sink. He's going to sink, and he'll take us with him. And I think history does not have that in store for this nation. So yes, I would say just let things play out, let things go, let Rupert do his thing, let him do his investigation. And if there are bad eggs within reform, let's see them. Let's everyone see them. But I wouldn't panic. As I keep saying, we are the English. We've got this.